Hey, welcome, Master. Nice to see you. Get more talkative in just a second. I'm finishing some back-end stuff here. Technically, I was first. I chatted like 2 hours ago. Well, that sounds like winning. All right, good evening, folks. My name's Phil Gallagher. I run Thraben University, and all right, I'm gonna level with you. We've got something a little bit weird tonight. So just take a look at this beauty here and just kind of appreciate this. In Legacy, a lot of times, so long as you're doing something that is powerful, there's a lot of things that are viable that shouldn't really seem like they're viable. And I wonder if this falls into that category. So we are playing a donation deck list, a Death Shadow Burn hybrid deck. So for anyone not familiar with how Death Shadow works, essentially you're trying to put your life total as low as you can to make Death Shadow a giant monster. But Death Shadow isn't really an effective creature at the beginning of the game. So you need to hurt yourself with fetch lands and shock lands, as well as a few other key spells, in order to do that. What this Death Shadow Burn deck does, in addition to all of that, is it gets some powerful cards that you're leveraging in a very odd way. So take a look at Flame Rift. For 2 mana, you deal 4 damage to each player. Normally, the 4 damage to you is a downside. But if you are playing Death Shadow, then that very well can be an upside, and Flame Rift can be something that is bringing you closer to actually making your Death Shadow a huge threat. This deck is a little bit conceptually different than a burn deck. A burn deck tries to go as quickly as possible and just get your opponent dead. This deck does that on some of the Goblin Guide draws, but otherwise you're kind of a weird control deck for the first couple of turns of the game. And you try to hurt yourself a little bit, thought seize your opponent to disrupt him a little bit, and then stick a Death Shadow or a Gurmag Angler. This deck is admittedly a little bit clunky. It does not get the blue cantrips to go and smooth everything out, and there's a lot of times where you have like all of these partial pieces in your deck, or sorry, in your hand, and you can't quite put something together. But it has potential. I played a couple of games in the the testing lobby last night to just kind of get a feel for it. I went something like 2-2 or 3-2 or something like that, just in some practice matches. There's a lot of weird lines that you have to get used to, like Chain Lightning, target me to grow my Death Shadow or make it playable. There's a lot of stuff like that that's not intuitive. So just kind of talking about your opening lines, your best line is probably like Cycle Street Wraith reanimated on turn 1. Other than that, Goblin Guide on turn 1 is really good. Otherwise, your next best plan is to go like Bloodstained Mire, fetch Blood Crypt, Thought Seize you, lose a little bit of life somehow else, and then play Death Shadow. This deck, I think, has some deck building issues, but I'm going to bring those up after the stream rather than prior to it. I don't want to kind of like bias the stream's opinion of the chat, or sorry, the chat's opinion of the deck list before we get started. But I think there's some issues on numbers that I'll talk about towards the end. The sideboard's odd. So I think a lot of it makes sense. Like, there's a Graveyard Hate package, There's a couple of hate cards for D&T because it's super popular right now. There's a handful of like artifact enchantment removal cards and one, which one was it? One Stomping Ground to play them. Searing Blaze for your creature's deck. Defense Grid as an anti-counter spell. And Duretti as, I guess, a combination removal spell / threat versus control. Some of my deck building issues are kind of with sideboard numbers and like in-out numbers for matchups. But that's something that's probably better to talk about it as I go rather than beforehand. So for anyone kind of new to my stream or who hasn't watched one of my streams recently, you will now see the Cardboard Live extension on your screen. Looks like a little happy card. If you click on that box, it will pop up the entire deck list that I'll be playing tonight, and you can hover over any cards you want in order to go and see what they're doing. Cardboard Live is one of my new sponsors, and they're treating me very well. I'm very excited to see what this program is going to be doing in the future. If you have any questions about that, throw it in the chat. Let's battle. All right, constructed tournaments, leagues. Yeah. So it's like a card with a microphone, right? So like the little thing that's coming down below its card mouth, that's supposed to be like a microphone, like it's like a commentator or something like that. That's the idea. So Cardboard Live is Wilson Hunter's current baby. It's his pet project that he's been working on for quite some time. I'm really excited to be a part of it. I think the extension is amazing. We've been using it for the Legacy Premier League, and there's some even better features that are available if like you're running paper tournaments, and you can get multiple deck lists up on the screen at the same time, and you know, pull up some things like metagame data. It's really neat. Magic cards confirmed, not made of Pop-Tarts, yes. All right. How much damage do I do to myself? Probably a lot. So this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 by turn 2. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 by turn 2. So turn 3, I can probably play just a Gargantuan, get Death Shadow. So this is going to be fine. I'm going to go ahead and... So my opponent probably takes my Shadow. So I probably shouldn't cycle my Street Wraith, actually. Yeah. Yeah, I have some thoughts about the sideboard that I'll share at the end. All right, here we go. Could do anything. Okay. All right, so do I want to fetch Shock? If I fetch Shock, I go to 13. I maybe don't want to fetch Shock since my Shadow was taken, and I don't have any manipulation to find another. So I think I'm just going to regular Shock. Although there's an argument for just like going and getting basic Mountain, because I have double Flame Rift in hand, and I'm going to do a lot of damage to myself that way. So actually, I think I like that. Oh yes, certainly confirmed, not D&T. The super awkward part about this is that, like, if my opponent has a Shadow, I'm going to lower their life total so easily for them. but there's not a lot I can do about that. Alright, 4 cards in graveyard. Unless I draw a fetch, I'm not going to be able to play a Gurmag. Ooh, super rewarded for fetching Mountain. Alright, so they're going to have a daze. Alright, so I can fetch down to 13, but Death Shadow's a 0/0 there. Or I can shock down to 13. I think I'm just better Flame Rifting this turn before my opponent gets that daze. Another Delver boy. Well, okay. So I attack my opponent down to 6. These Delver flips, they hit me to 2. So this Flame Rift is probably just dead this game. This Death Shadow will be pretty good. I know my opponent has a daze. That's super awkward. Because in order to pay for the daze for my second 1-drop spell of the turn, I would need to shock. Shocking puts me to 6, and if the Delver flips, I'm going to die. And I'm not above making this game a draw. But I think I can probably win. So if I play Goblin Guide, and I attack in with both of these, it's going to put my opponent to 4. I then have 4 damage in play. This is surprisingly intricate. I think it's correct to play out a Goblin Guide. And then I'm going to get knowledge of my opponent's top card based on these Goblin Guide triggers. Alright, so they have a Reanimate. So the Delvers flip. That means I cannot shock myself. JK. Alright. Now I can shock myself, as long as I have my opponent dead on the next turn, which I think I pretty easily do. So my opponent can lose 1 life, go down to 5 to reanimate Delver, attack me down to 5. I can attack in with both Goblin Guides, put my opponent to 4, and Flame Rift them. Can I afford to shock? If I shock, I go down to 6, go down to 3, Flame Rift doesn't kill. But I can just play double huge threat, and that's fine. So which one of these is bigger? Gurmag Angler will be a 5/5. I'll put my life total down to 6. So this is a 7/7. So I play my Gurmag Angler first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I need this Death Shadow to be the 6th card in my graveyard. If I do this, he instead reanimates my Death Shadow, which will be very large. Does that matter? No. If he just reanimates that, if he reanimates my Death Shadow, I'll get 2 damage in, put my opponent to 4, and then I can Flame Rift. So what would I be at? I'd be at 6, I'd be at 3 in that draw. Alright. This is, like, surprisingly stupid complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What if I just Flame Rift my opponent here? If I just Flame Rift my opponent, I go to 6, I Flame Rift, they Daze, they reanimate Delver. Then they're at 5, and then I don't have lethal, and I'll die on the backswing. Ugh. This is miserable. All right. So what if I instead shock myself, play Gurmag Angler, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My opponent dazes it. I attack them to 2, I Flame Rift them and kill them. That sounds fine. If they cast Reanimate targeting the Gurmag Angler, and they forget that they are going to lose life for that, yes, indeed, that is something that could happen. All right. Well, there's no difference between 1 and 3 here. Woohoo! All right. So we're playing against Death Shadow. Reminder that this deck shouldn't work sometimes, but it works anyway. So I have some options. I can play Ley Lines in order to stop Gurmags, and to a lesser extent, Reanimate on Street Wraith. I can play Duretti to go and destroy stuff. I can play Searing Blaze to pick off, like, Delvers. I don't know what options are actually worth it. So my mana's gonna be taxed by Wasteland and Daze. So even though, like, Duretti could be, like, repeated creature kill or repeated chump blockers, I don't know that, like, trying to play a 3-drop, especially on the draw, is actually good. I, like, 100% I'm going to want this Diabolic Edict. And I don't actually know what else I want. Like, this snuff out's pretty bad. It doesn't kill the shadow, or it doesn't kill Gurmag Angler. So that should probably go. Like, I guess I should play some Searing Blazes. It can kill smaller shadows, maybe, or kill Delvers. Like, I can probably trim on Fire Blast versus a Counterspell deck. Something like this is probably fine. This is... Oh, look! It's my friends at Cardboard Live. One of my awesome, awesome sponsors. Lord Darkview, you've been all sorts of lucky recently. Didn't you also win the one of the Legacy Premier League giveaways yesterday? So lucky. So I kind of want a threat, but I have a whole bunch of removal spells, so I guess that's fine. Hellclan, I thought you said this was all rigged, but it's apparently rigged in your favor. So, like, I know I already said this at the beginning of the stream, but for those of you who weren't around for it, the little sort of like card with a microphone mouth icon that's on the left-hand side of my screen, that is the extension for Cardboard Live, and I'm really, really happy to be sponsored by them now. Like, you can scroll over all of these cards to like see what they look like. You can see my deck list at any time. And if we were running an actual tournament, you'd also get to see like some metagame data. And I just think that's so useful as like a player, as a commentator, as a streamer. Like, for all of those reasons, I think like Cardboard Live is just the future. I just think it's a clear upgrade to things that we already have, like Stream Decker. And I'm really glad to no longer have to put my my deck lists below the stream. It's one of my personal hopes that we get somewhere like Star City Games to go. All right, just tear it apart here. To go and pick up Cardboard Live so that we can just have it all the time and get like some super sweet metagame data from it. So my opponent's effectively at 5 life, but I don't think I want to start just firing off these bolts at the face yet. It'll just make the shadow bigger, and I don't really think I'm in any hurry. Alright, so shadow... Alright, so my opponent has 8 life. So I can bolt them down to 5. Searing Blaze them down to 3, bolt them down to lethal. Assuming they don't have any counter magic or anything. There's a chance this backfires, but whatever. We didn't come here to not try to burn out our opponents. Oh man, this is just great. Please not force blue card. Woo! All right, so we have a D&T question. All right, I think I came to the right stream for my question. Well, yes. Is Death and Taxes in Modern a good thing for a beginner in the format? So let me answer that in sort of two different ways. Death and Taxes is a deck that you can bring to a Modern event, and you can learn a lot about Modern by playing. It can be a little complicated to play, but a lot of times you get to like play an Aether Vial and just dump a whole bunch of critters into play, and you kind of hope it's good enough. I think that the Modern Death and Taxes deck, though, is just a worse deck than Humans by quite a bit. I think Humans does a lot of the same things that D&T wants to do, but better. So I'd say, like, if you want to just, like, go to your local game store and you want to play some games and you want to start learning about Modern, yes, I think D&T is a great way to get into Modern. But if you're looking to, like, go to big events and you really want to win, maybe consider Humans over D&T in Modern. What if you want to go to your local LGS store? Well, D&T's probably still fine there. Yeah, Vervandi, one of the things I realized by playing Modern D&T is that, like, on your hands that, like, work, my god, that deck feels good. When you're, like, on the play and you go turn 1 Vial into turn 2 Arbiter and your opponent can't fetch, and then you Ghost Quarter them and they're stuck with a fetch. Like, the deck feels disgusting. And then other times, you just kind of draw your wrong hate pieces, and it feels a little bit clunky. Oh yeah, like a lot of the Modern decks can be expensive. Same with Legacy, and you have to slowly build towards them. So if you're looking at an entry point into a format, yeah, D&T is a great way to do that. So Whitefaces, we were talking about Modern, not to be confused with Legacy Humans, which I've also been messing around with. So to just kind of recap the last conversation, Modern D&T is a fine entry point into the format. It's going to be fine at your local levels, but as a whole, Humans is probably just better in Modern. Yeah, I agree. You can do some really hateful things with D&T in any format if you gear them to beat your local shop. So it's been all right. It's been a while since I played Modern D&T, but I think the last time I did, everyone at the shop was playing like green black mid range decks, and so I just like showed up with 4 Mirror Crusaders, and the card's real good. And I mostly just killed my opponent with Mirror Crusaders instead of like the taxes part of the death. I just focused on the depth portion. Man, this queue time is rough. No one willing to go and take on the Burn Death Shadow deck, which currently has not dropped a game. Scoreboard. All right, there we go. Goblins is a great tribe. I love me some goblins. Way better than other tribes, like, say, Merfolk, to choose one completely at random. Oh man, I just looked at my hand. I'm excited. We're going to keep this one. Elves. Joke's on you, elf man. Okay. I have a lot of choices this turn. One way or another, I'm going to start by cycling Street Wraith to figure out what's going on. I can reanimate Street Wraith this turn. I can Thoughtseize my opponent this turn. I can Goblin Guide this turn. They're all pretty good lines. Just reanimating Street Wraith is like my fastest on-paper clock, but it's likely to just get chump blocked, and I don't have a follow-up Death Shadow. I'm inclined to Thoughtseize off of Blood Crypt. Okay. What does my opponent do on their turn? So on my opponent's turn, my opponent goes tap, tap, Visionary, draw a card. They play a land, they make a mana, crop rotation, get Cradle, make 2 mana, deploy a second Visionary. This natural order is something that's going to go to the follow-up Thoughtseize. So I think I'm just going to take the crop rotation with this first one here. And kind of hope that my opponent doesn't draw a land. If they draw a land and I take this, they go Visionary, Heritage Druid. No, I'm kind of safe for the next turn. I don't want my opponent to have a Cradle with this like multiple Elvish Visionary setup they have. Ugh. Super punished. Super duper punished. Holy shit. Oh god, I am just like 100% going to die to Elf Beatdown. Those draws, though. Those draws, though. Yeah, everything went wrong. Elves is unbeatable. Oh my god, just natural order off the top, too? Unbeatable. I'm with you, Jazzy. Elves. Elves too strong. Yeah. So this is kind of what I was talking about with the sideboard. We don't have too many super impactful cards. I never feel like I have very many cards that I can board in for a matchup. It's a little rough. So these Diabolic Edicts are probably too slow. And just making elves sacrifice a creature doesn't particularly matter. This is going to be a very poor matchup. They're a combo deck that's essentially faster than us, and they can also a little bit invalidate what I'm doing on the ground. So I think I'm going to need to get pretty lucky to mize a win here. All right. How much life can I make myself lose? I can make myself lose 4. That puts me to 16. I'd still need to lose 4 more, and I also don't have red to cast my spells. Mulligan. Ugh. Why? I guess I'll keep this one. I can't snuff out because I don't have a swamp. And I can't Thoughtseize because I don't have black mana. But maybe the Street Wraith will draw me into something sweet. Cries. Hey, that's black mana. Alright. We'll put that on top. That's our swamp for snuff out. Alright. How do I possibly win? I actually don't know. Alright, so the plan is for them to draw nothing for the rest of the game. I'm going to snuff out their Elvish Mystic, and we're going to hope that's good enough. Come on, reanimate. My normal plan against elves is go get some food for next round. That makes sense for me, yeah. Alright, so what if my opponent whacks us with Nettle Sentinel, and then we just, like, draw running Death Shadows for the rest of the game? That'd be okay. This is the advanced 99-1 matchup. It does feel pretty bad, yes. I agree. Forgot to dismiss that. Alright, well, I can't cast his Thoughtseize anymore, or I'll die if my opponent gets a green spell. So I'm just going to pass the turn. I'm hoping to draw a mountain so that I can Fire Blast myself. Otherwise, I'll Thoughtseize myself. One Tree Boy. Actually, if I draw a mountain, I can Thought Seize myself, hold priority, and Fire Blast myself. Alright, my opponent's taking too long. I'm just conceding. That one wasn't happening. So, since the queues have been taking a while, just to talk about the sideboard a little bit, I feel like a lot of the sideboard cards aren't powerful enough. I feel like this deck needs to play extremely powerful sideboard cards to make up for some of its deficiencies in matchups. So I think Leyline of the Void is a good fit into that category, but I think a bunch of these other cards are just medium. I want, like, stupid cards where when I draw them, they swing the game by a lot. Things like Pyrokinesis, things like Blazing Volley or something like that. Cards where when you draw them, you will wreck some deck. And I feel like these sort of like medium power level cards just don't cut it here. Yeah, I'll keep this. This is a fine burn hand if I just, like, draw any other land, right? Just, like, Goblin Guide into Rift into, like, hopefully play some black spell. And if I don't, that's okay, too. I don't think I want to cycle this. I guess if I draw exactly Reanimate, I do want to cycle the Street Wraith. But I kind of want to make my opponent think that I'm playing against Burn. So I have a 4 out of 52 chance of drawing Reanimate. That's not amazing. I'm just going to Goblin Guide. And if my opponent makes a couple of poor decisions based on the fact that I Goblin Guide, that's awesome for me. Alright, so my opponent reveals an island. They brainstorm. They fetch another island. Polluted Delta was the land. What does that mean for me? Hmm. Okay. So, now there's the mind game of, is the last card on top of my opponent's library a land so that they can redraw it, or a 1-drop so that they can try to counter something? It's probably not a 2-drop. So I'm going to Flame Rift now. Alright, so they pitch Ponder to Force of Will to get rid of the Flame Rift. And they've got an island with that. So many islands. Please tap out for Mentor and let me snuff it out. Aww. This whole, like, Goblin Guide counterbalance situation is super awkward for everyone involved. Swords to Plowshares on top. So I actually probably just want to snuff this out to go down to 14 and not go back up to 20. So this Swords to Plowshares that's on top of my opponent's library is actually a problem. So what can I do? On a later turn, I can Fire Blast them and then play Death's Shadow, but there's a 1 on top right now. If I just play Gurmag Angler, I nuke my graveyard, go back up to 19, and then I'm way behind. So I think I'm just supposed to pass. Oh man, are they predicting that away? Deal. Senor Yace. There's some consideration to just, like, Fire Blasting that idiot there before he has a chance to Force of Will. But if I draw Thoughtseize on my turn, I'd way rather Thoughtseize first before just, like, throwing my lands away. So how do I want to navigate this? There's most certainly a 1 on top of that library, in my opinion. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can go and cast Gurmag Angler. I can try to Fire Blast Jace. If that gets... it's awkward with this Lightning Bolt. I guess during my opponent's upkeep I can... Or no, my opponent's draw step I can Lightning Bolt Jace. Opponent's draw step, I guess, is the best time. The second card's also a 1. They get me. Alright, so we're going to get Snapcaster Brainstorm. Technically, I should have done this with the other trigger still on the stack. So if my opponent has another Brainstorm and Terminus, I don't get blown out. Yeah, Gurmag Angler is just a friendly zombie fish. Well, that back to basics isn't going to do a lot. They can keep that. This Supreme Verdict would be insane. So I'm going to take that. And I'm going to play this 1/1 Death Shadow out. Because I'm not beating my opponent if they do another thing. And I'm just going to hope that this Ponder whiffs and doesn't find them like a Terminus or another Verdict or a Snapcaster Mage in a land. I'm kind of all in at this point. Fuck. One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7. Oh my god, my opponent just brainstormed. God. So for anyone not aware of what just happened, my opponent Swords to Plowshared Gurmag Angler, which in turn increased my life total to above 13, killing Death Shadow in the process. Alright, I've had enough of this one. My opponent's gonna untap with Jace Counterbalance. We're donezo. I don't have red mana. So just kind of like talking about the nature of the sideboard cards again. I don't have that many like super swingy sideboard cards, right? Like what am I supposed to do here? I bring in some Durettis, which are, I guess, a repeatable source of 1/1s. I bring in a defense grid, and that's probably it. So Good luck tonight. Thanks, bye. So, edicts are really bad. And then I'll probably board out one of Snuff Out or Dismember. Alright, I gotta think about the fringe scenarios. In the fringe scenarios, I can dismember my own Death Shadow to grow it. And I can't snuff out my own Death Shadow to grow it. Hello, hello, welcome. I think we're currently 1-1. We crushed pretty hard the first round, and then we just got absolutely rolled by elves. Just very little that I could do. All right, what does this hand do? This hand has effectively 4, 8, 11 damage. I can't cast this Gurmag Angler anytime soon. This Dismember is probably dead. Deck mulligans abysmally. Absolutely abysmally. So King, we are currently playing Red-Black Death Shadow. Please don't source the flash shares me. No! Alright, I'm running on fumes here. Oh yes, all sorts of weird. Okay, that's a fine draw. I need a little buddy here to maybe do like 4 or 6 points of damage. That'd be ideal. Yeah, having to like translate source documents yourself is miserable. Especially if it's actually just anything done with real handwriting, because Roman handwriting is rough. Alright, our Goblin Guide only successfully got in for 2 points of damage, so that's no good. Now my opponent gets something to go and smooth out their draws. I actually do want to redraw a Goblin Guide, so I am going to fetch just to shuffle that Goblin Guide in there. We're pretty damn far away from Death Shadow right now. So I could go to 16. I could Fire Blast myself down to 12 and play a 1/1 Death Shadow. Oh yeah, a like absolutely astonishing amount of the medieval stuff is written in Latin. Not necessarily the exact same Latin that the Romans were using, but Latin nonetheless, sort of a slightly simplified form. Gosh, that guy. Please don't Fate Seal. Please don't Fate Seal. Ah, they know what's going on. So I guess... My opponent's actually effectively at 4 life. I'm going to get Fate Sealed for the rest of this game. But while my opponent's tapped out, maybe I'm supposed to just, like, fire off both of these. And then just say, like, alright, you need to Fate Seal me off of, like, every burn spell for the rest of the game. I actually think that's probably correct. Because I don't want my opponent to untap and turn on cards like Counterspell, Flusterstorm, or Snapcaster Mage into one of those. I could also just, like, 4-for-1 myself to kill the Jace, but I don't think I'm winning if I do that. Yeah, King, I think as an undergrad, those are the best sort of, like, culminating events for a class by a very large order of magnitude, because learning how to, like, present and, like, formally draw up your ideas and make them understandable to another person is such an important life skill. And a lot of my, like, most memorable classes, the ones that I, like, actually learned the most from, were those sorts of, like, conference classes. Ugh. That card flipping is bad news for me. Not that this, like, Jace Fate Sealing isn't. Yeah, I think, like, regardless of what field you're in, those sorts of things are some of the most useful. So, for example, when I was still doing, like, science stuff, a lot of, like, the classes I did that ended in, like, research presentations, like, formal events of that nature were some of the most useful. Alright, so my opponent put that on top. They haven't brainstormed to set this up, though, right? What did they do on their turn? Or no, they did brainstorm. Draws a card with Protect Brainstorm, put 3 on top. Alright, so I don't want to cast this Chain Lightning yet. Yeah, the secret to getting people to come to events like that is bribery. It is free food. Humans, we're simple creatures. Alright. Opponent, please have literally nothing. Uh-oh. Now we're just dead to this bad boy. Yeah, so now my opponent just ultimates Jace, and I die to decking, and I only have 3 points of burn left in my deck. Oh wait, sorry, I looked at it wrong. But the same is still true now that I drew a land. When the miracle player just lets your bolt resolve and you go to 1. Hey, maybe they won't ultimate their Jace. What do you think, chat? Do you think they'll ultimate their Jace this turn? Ah, it happened. Dead. Yeah, I think at the end of this, I should just like talk about the sideboard and some of the numbers, because I think some things are very wrong. But that's probably best saved for the debrief at the end. Like I've hinted that I think the sideboard needs work, but I think there's some main deck stuff that's just off too. Miracles is a really good deck right now. It had largely disappeared from the online metagame prior to the GP, but we'll probably see people playing it more now that it has like another big result to its name. So King, my going rate for a donation deck list is $12, and I'll play your deck list on stream. And recently I've added in sort of another feature where every 3 donation deck lists I get, I'll go and do something special for the chat. So the first reward I'm doing at 3 donation deck lists is I'm going to play a Mangara Ensnaring Bridge prison deck. It's something that I've played before. It's been about 2 years since I've played it, so I've never played it on stream or anything. But it's something that I've always thought was really fun for me, and so I've been looking forward to a chance to do that again. Man, I think we're playing against Miracles again. Yeah, so Speed Force Punk, overwhelmingly right now, the Death Shadow deck of choice is just straight blue-black. You will see some variation on that, but overwhelmingly, blue-black Shadow is the most popular Shadow variant. So the reason why you're not seeing Sylvan Library is not because, like, conceptually it's not a good card. It's because the decks just aren't in the colors currently. Oh yeah, force this. I will reanimate the shit out of this Goblin Guide. Game on. What are we doing, chat? What are we doing? We're feeding a Miracles player's lands. That's what we're doing. All right, that's a preordain. So I can fetch to 13, fetch to 10, and play Death Shadow. how many shocks do I play? I play 3 shocks, so it'd be super unfortunate if I drew one. So I should just do this now. I'm also just going to dome them with this lightning bolt right now, just for my mana efficiency in case I draw something like a Flame Rift. But we're just gonna draw lands. Am I willing to commit another threat to the board? Yes. My opponent doesn't have white mana yet. And I would really love to have my opponent dead ASAP. There is also a chance that my opponent is not Miracles, and this is actually some, like, Show and Tell deck. In which case, I just want to clock my opponent. I think it's fine to use the Thalia emote everywhere. And you don't necessarily have to be on the channel to use the emote. Like that. Alright, that's a Scalding Tarn. So this is kind of weird, but I guess I should actually, like... Alright, so this is 5, 9, 13, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or no, 12. So I am presenting lethal. I guess I should Lightning Bolt myself here, because my opponent can't do anything about the Death Shadow. And if I Lightning Bolt myself and something else goes wrong, I'll have a 6/6 Shadow in play. This is why I played some practice games with this deck last night. It's real weird. Hey, Monohell, thank you very much. 3 months is a long time, and I really do appreciate that. Alright, so I effectively have my opponent dead now. You want to cast Accumulated Knowledge. I want to see if you have Force of Will. The Force of Will, they humorously go to 3, and then anything is lethal from there. Alright, so until we saw the Accumulated Knowledge, we weren't like 100% it was Miracles. But in that last card there, we got that confirmation. So again, we'll go Edict out, Snuff out, and bring in these 3 cards. Yeah, like, when you get to do your thing unmolested, you can do some pretty sweet things with a deck like this. But I feel like it's very easy to stumble with this deck. I don't have a 1-drop play. I have 2 Flame Rifts, which are some of the most efficient cards. So, like, I have 2 Flame Rifts, a fetch land, and double Death Shadow, as well as something that lets me grind. So I actually think I keep this, even though kind of at the surface level, this hand isn't all that impressive. Oh my god, does my opponent not have another land? Man, my opponent must have, like, triple Swords to Plowshares or something insane like that over there. And yes, Echo, I had a pretty good time at the GP. I finished 59th, which is a fine finish. And I had a lot of fun hanging out with my sweet mates, I guess you'd call them. I was hanging out with Zach Koch, Nick Miller, and Stefan Hensch, and we had an absolute blast together. So I think my opponent is like 95% to have a Swords to Plowshares, so I don't really want to expose a Death's Shadow to that. So while my opponent is stumbling, I'm just going to try to stick this Planeswalker. And if they want to Swords to Plowshares my 1/1 colorless tokens, or if they want to, like, force this, I'm okay with that. Ugh. Yeah, that's about what I thought. So how do I want to sequence this here? I can just play a Death Shadow as a 2/2, and then if my opponent Swords to Plowshares, that's not that big of a deal. Or I can just, like, reanimate a Street Wraith as a 3/4. That lowers my life total by a butt ton, right? By 5. So that would put me to 6. My Flame Rift would put me to 2. And then even if my opponent has more Swords to Plowshares left at that point, as long as they don't just, like, Snapcaster Mage me, I'm in pretty good shape. I guess, like, just reanimating Street Wraith is kind of risky. So I think given the risk factor associated with it, I just Death Shadow. My goal is to just, like, not accidentally eat it this game. All right. I don't think you have a 2 on top. Swords to Plowshares is on top. Yup. Do I want to Fire Blast now? I don't think I want to Fire Blast now. No, I don't think I want to Upkeep Bolt in case my opponent has a Brainstorm, because I haven't really given them a great opportunity to go and, like, cast one yet. So my opponent tops on those Preordains, which is not good news for me. So since Reanimate isn't a burn spell, I'm okay with throwing one away and just confirming the fact that my opponent has a 1-drop on top of their library. But all of these things that have the potential to actually do more immediate damage, I'm not willing to throw away. Yeah, counterbalance is cripplingly good against this deck. Unquestionable. Playing against it multiple rounds in a row is super unfortunate. Alright, so the top card of the library is currently unknown. How do I sequence my turn best knowing that? So I think I'll Goblin Guide. Let's see if I can push a little damage with this. Probably not. Like, we haven't seen Brainstorm yet. It's got to be Brainstorm time. Nope, Terminus time. So my opponent's probably willing to take 2 from a Goblin Guide. This would be a very bad time to cast a Fire Blast, by the way. Okay, my opponent is not willing to take 2. They're just fetching away the Terminus. Swords to Plowshares. Yep. Alright. Did you find a 7 with your counterbalance, Mr. JB Mage? He did not even look. Oh no. That Council's judgment. Can't play this yet. We're going to get to the point where I might just, like, end of turn, tap 6 lands, and Fire Blast my opponent. Jeez, I want my opponent to fetch. Opponent, please fetch, so that if I draw a Fire Blast, I can Fire Blast you twice and try to end this. Game to win, there's definitely some tension in the deck list. Okay, so in retrospect, I think I made a mistake. I think I should have left one burn spell in my graveyard and one Street Wraith. That way, if I killed one of my opponent's Snapcaster mages, or they chump blocked with it, I could reanimate a Snapcaster mage and then fire off a burn spell afterwards. So I think that was an error on my end. All right, well, I'm officially in hardcast Fire Blast range. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to play this tapped. Let's say no. And we're going to try to make a last stand in the next turn or two here. Crap. Man, if I can Fire Blast that thing and somehow reanimate it, that could be sweet. So many lands. Okay. Let's start here. If my opponent has a 1-drop on top, I think I'm super mega boned. Okay. So this reanimate doesn't work this turn. All right, what if I just, like, Fire Blast this Mentor, and it works, and my opponent shuffles. Then I reanimate it. All right. You knew about that. I knew about that. All right, maybe Counterbalance is so unbeatable that I need to Destructive Revelry. Maybe I give up on this Dismember. Maybe the random, like, one of defense grid is kind of loose. Like, I guess it's good because it, like, also is something that impacts counterbalance. Actually, maybe I'm supposed to, like, trim one Death Shadow against the Swords to Plowshares deck. And maybe Fire Blast is 2 all in. Okay, we're going places. We're going places very quickly. I don't want to draw more lands. Stop that. Alright, it's turn 1. I'm at 8 life. I have a 3/4 Swamp Walker. How can we possibly lose? This feels like Brainstorm and Determinus, and I'm just dead. But I don't think I can only commit one threat to the board. Like, my hand is an all-in, I try to kill you right now hand. Yep. So I'm going to bolt my opponent to 12. I'm going to play a Gurmag Angler, which will be a 3-turn clock. Likely a 2-turn clock if I draw anything. So my opponent will need, like, a Swords to Plowshares as well. Alright, how many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards here. I'm gonna make it 6 and just pay 1 for Gurmag Angler, which probably does. Actually, so I probably want to fetch. I'm going to leave the Blood Crypt in there for later. I probably want to play this, and then go Gurmag Angler. And I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So tapping this way means that if my opponent just like slams it back to basics, I don't have outs to it since my only green source is tapped. But I want to leave myself open that like reanimate, target a bolt line, like reanimate a Snapcaster, target a bolt line that I talked about before. Well, the best way to get faster at playing Magic is just to play more Magic. Like as you internalize more of like the deck's math and your common lines and your roles in matchup, you will just become you'll become a much faster player pretty easily. So, awkwardly, if my opponent has Force of Will, it's actually better to attack first with Gurmag Angler to guarantee myself 5 points of damage, rather than play the Goblin Guide out. If I play Goblin Guide and my opponent has Force of Will, I actually just miss 5 points of damage, because my opponent will create a chump blocker and just chump block Angler. My opponent knows I have like infinite bolts in my deck, so I think they have Force of Will. So I'm just going to attack with Angler here. And I don't think I play this Goblin Guide out at all this turn. And now we're just hoping to like rip burn spells off the top and kill my opponent before this Monastery Mentor gets me. Oh shit, I'm at 4 life. My opponent just plays 2 spells, I'm dead. I'm going to pause here like I'm considering removing this card, and then I'm going to take my damage. 100% should have played the Goblin Guide as a blocker. Okay, now what? If my opponent doesn't play any spells, I get 5 damage with Gurmag Angler. If my opponent has spells, though, I probably just die, right? If my opponent has any spells, I'm just going to die to, like, the tokens themselves, I think. So in order for me to win, do I need to, like, play this Goblin Guide and hope they have, like, literal 5 lands in hand? Or do I just attack with Angler, try to put them to 1, and then play out double creature post-combat? I think I like that. This forces my opponent to make the first move. That is a really good card to have. That substantially shrinks my Death Shadow. I think I need to play both of these, even though, like, the Goblin Guide has haste and I could potentially play it next turn, because I'm very afraid of just dying. I know I'm at 7, but Prowess gets out of control very quickly. Okay, this is probably the point where I'm just dead. So any one spell is lethal. 3 spells is lethal through Goblin Guide. Oh, good God. So my opponent can't kill me with that this turn. How can I possibly deal 5 before my opponent kills me? I don't think I can. Goblin Guide will never get through for damage. Literally never. I don't think my opponent has a spell. So I guess I can trade here. My opponent doesn't draw a spell in the next turn cycle either, and I get the chance to double spell and kill my opponent. That is the out. We do not have that out. Dead. Yeah, Miracles feels like a terrible matchup. Elves ran into a terrible match. Like, Elves feels terrible as well. So, like, I didn't feel like I had any game against Elves, and I felt like the Swords to Plowshares decks were just going to obliterate this deck. And my prediction seemed kind of accurate. All right, sorry, I was just doing some mental math for kind of my like debrief after the next round. Yeah, I think that the deck needs some drastic overhauls in order to be competitive. I don't mean that, to be insulting, but like I think there's some things significantly wrong with some of the numbers that are really resulting in clunkiness. Yeah, so like I'll do the debrief after the next round, and I'll kind of like walk you through some of my thoughts on some of the numbers. Yeah, so Vervandi, like conceptually speaking, there's real tension in the deck list, and I do agree with you. Like a burn deck wants to drop a creature as quickly as possible, and then try to end the game. Whereas the Death Shadow deck wants to kind of like punch a hole, and then once that hole is made, you wreck face with like Death Shadow or Gurmag Angler. So there's a lot of very weird tension in your roles in a matchup, and your role might be very variable depending on what turn it is. Where'd that window go? There we go. My opponent last played Pox, so that's pretty spicy. Other than that, it looks like they played a lot of D&T. Alright, I have no lands. This one's got to be a mulligan. This hand's pretty terrible, but I probably need to keep it since deck mulligans so poorly. Alright, how much damage is this? 3, 6, 10. This is 14 damage if I put that on top. My avenue to winning this game is probably my opponent being on something that can't interact with burn. So I will just top that. How cold am I willing to be to a wasteland? Alright, my opponent is playing Pox. Then they'll have 4 wastelands and 4 sinkholes. This hand cannot beat a sinkhole. This hand could beat a wasteland, but it would be very difficult to. I guess I also can't beat a smallpox, right? I just can't beat anything that takes away this land. I don't think I win if I play around wasteland. Oh, thank God, it's just Eldrazi. Okay. How soon can my opponent Endbringer? So, this will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, like, they can Endbringer, but not for a long time. So I should just take this Jitte so they can't, like, Mise me and gain some life. And hopefully I'll get to, like, draw lands off the top and not lose to Wasteland. Please don't Wasteland me, bro. Yep. The good news is that, like, if I get a Death Shadow, it will actually be real big. Oh man, did my opponent draw a Spirit Guide? Or no, they just drew a Reality Smasher? Nope, Endless One. That's still really bad. Okay, do I have outs? My opponent next turn will cast Endbringer, so even if I draw, like, land into Death Shadow, Endbringer's just going to beat that. So rather than discard a card that gives my opponent information, I'm just going to concede. Alright. So I'm going to make a pile of cards that I would consider. These are the pile of cards that I would consider playing. Destructive Revelry answers like Jitte and Chalice, that's good. Duretti making chump blockers is probably good enough. Searing Blaze isn't going to kill a lot of their creatures, so that probably isn't good enough either. So I'll probably go for these 4 cards. I can probably trim on these Flame Rifts because my opponent's pretty likely to whack my life total good at some point in these games one way or another. So I should just probably not play the things that hurt both of us. I think that's correct. Boy, I'm super soft Chalice. I guess it's like the same problem as Counterbalance is, right? I'm just kind of cold to that. So, I like Goblin Guide on the play. And I really like this hand if I get a black source very quickly. If I get a black source very quickly, I go like Goblin Guide into Edict your first threat, into Reanimate that first threat. So, is this crazy? I have 18 lands remaining in deck, so I have 18 out of 53 to hit. Not stellar. Not insane. This is immune to Wasteland, currently, but in order for it to continue to be immune to Wasteland, I only have 4 hits. Or I guess 7 hits if I just draw the Swamp naturally. I think this needs to go back. This hand is just worse, but I need to keep it on 6. And Fire Blast needs to go to the bottom. Kill on Street Wraith. So I don't think I want to fetch and put that Fire Blast back into my deck. Okay, how big is this Death Shadow? So I can deal myself 6 currently. So I can make a 1/1 Death Shadow this turn that can get absolutely huge. awkwardly if my opponent has Dismember or Warping Wail. This Death Shadow is just going to eat it, and I'm going to be left with nothing. But if my opponent just Thought Knots me and takes my Death Shadow, that's also super inconvenient. All right. So I decided on this line because I still have the option to bolt myself if my opponent goes for a Warping Wail. My opponent just has the Dismember. So I can bolt myself and increase this thing by 4, but that's not enough. Alright, how about you just play a Chalice this turn that I can Destructive Revelry, and then don't play anything next turn? I guess Matter Reshaper is fine. Second Matter Reshaper is a lot less fine. I don't have anywhere near enough burn to go to the face. So this needs to happen. It just, like, in no way is good for me. Alright, I Vugan. First Matter Reshaper was free. Okay, okay. So I can just get a Street Wraith. No, I can just... I can just get my Death Shadow back, actually. And potentially outclass everything in another turn or two. Okay, that Urborg is actually really good for me, because some of my options for double spelling were really limited, given the color cost of my hand. Reality Smasher. Okay. I'm going to make one very big boy. So I kind of want to bolt this Matter Reshaper, hope my opponent doesn't hit a creature off of it, Edict them, attack for 7. Please no creature, please no creature, please no creature. Ancient Tomb. That's fine. So because my opponent can currently Warping Whale and create a creature, I'm not actually going to use this edict right. Actually, yeah, I'm not going to use this edict right now. This will be punished if they play a man land. Getting rid of the red-green land seems very poor, but maybe my opponent doesn't really know what I've got going on. Alright, so now I need to bluff having a removal spell in order to stay in this, because my opponent has the option to just like pump their ballista, swing in, and then kill me. But if I have a lightning bolt effect and they try that, or like any removal spell and they try that, they die. So they might need to just hold the ballista back. Alright, so now we'll make the opponent do the thing that kills me. Let's see if they know how their cards work. Okay, now let's do the debrief. So, essentially, I don't think that this deck is very competitive in its current form. I believe that it has too many issues, and the first issue is actually in the mana base. Its mana base is abysmal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 basic mountains, 3 basic swamps. When you open on these basic mountain hands and you have these like Death Shadow, Thoughtseize hands, they're unplayable. And similarly, when you open up on the basic swamp and you end up with these like Goblin Guide, Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, Flame Rift hands, those are also unplayable. So I think the deck might need like more fetch lands so that it can actually play fewer mana sources. And looking at something like Death Shadow, like the blue-black Death Shadow deck list, might give you like a better starting point for a mix of those. And I just think that I had too many unkeepable hands due to these basics. So I think that's the first weak link in the chain is actually in the mana base. I know that there's like some thought that like playing the basics is what is going to make you stable, but because you have like these 22 1-drops that you really want to be able to deploy on one, you need your mana to be good. And even though this is just like a very simple 2-color deck with relatively few mana requirements, I don't know that the mana actually is good. Like I didn't sit down and do the math of the mana base or anything, but it's my inclination that this isn't good. Next, as far as the mana base goes, I think you need at least one more Shockland. I believe that the the blue-black Death Shadow runs 3 Shocklands, and so I think it's 3 Watery Graves, 2 Underground Seas, and you've got 2 in 1 here, which does not seem like enough. So I think you need to play a couple more fetches. I think there needs to be 1, maybe 2 more Blood Crypts in here. I think 1. And probably another couple of Badlands. So that's what I have to say about mana. As far as this stuff goes, I think 4 Fire Blast is absolutely too many. This card was regularly uncastable, again, largely due to these swamps. But I still don't know that Fire Blast is like the absolute best thing that you can be doing. I don't really want this as a 4-of. It doesn't feel like the thing that, at least right now, I can consistently cast every game. So, like, anytime I have Urborg or one of these swamps, this just becomes uncastable in the early game. And, like, the times when you want to be on a Fire Blast draw are the times where you get, like, these, like, Goblin Guide starts, and you just get to go ridiculous aggro into killing with Fire Blast, and that wasn't really happening. I don't even know if this card should be in the deck. Like, maybe there's some world where you're supposed to play something like Sulfuric Vortex, Eidolon of the Great Revel, or Price of Progress even over that card. Fire Blast just did not feel good to me tonight. Like, it certainly shouldn't be a 4-of. And I would start by trimming that and see how that feels. Next, I'm not 100% sure about this removal suite. I'm not really sure what the edicts do that other cards can't. So I was actually thinking that those Diabolic Edicts maybe should be Tyrant's choice. It's a card like Council's Judgment that has Will of the Council. And you vote, and if you're tied, so you vote for torture or death. If death gets more votes, it's an edict. If torture gets more votes or is tied, each opponent loses 4 life. I just wonder if something like that, where it's just like another hyper-efficient burn spell, might actually be good. I'm not 100% sure there. But, like, it's always a 2 mana 4 damage, which is a very, very good rate. Like one other thing I don't necessarily like about this deck is that when you draw these cards and they're just dead. You can't brainstorm them back. You have no other outlet for them. So I don't know that there's anything that can be done there. But I almost wonder, like, if in game one you shouldn't have something like Edict, you should have something that's more flexible and that will always have an effect. Because, like, these two, at least you get the weird corner case scenario of, like, dismember or snuff out my own guy to grow a Death Shadow. Okay. So, recapping, I think the mana base needs work. I question Diabolic Edict. I think Fire Blast should probably be trimmed or converted into something else. And I think cards like Eidolon of the Great Rebel, Sulfuric Vortex, and not Back to Basics, Price of Progress all have potential in the main deck. Collective Brutality is another good suggestion. That's a flexible card. All right, moving on to the sideboard. I just don't think this sideboard is in any way good in its current configuration. And I think my biggest problem is that when I draw these cards, with the exception of these ley lines, I don't necessarily just feel like I'm automatically going to win the game or that my matchup percentage is going to swing by a huge, huge amount. And I think in a deck like this that doesn't have manipulation, your sideboard cards need to be just absolute haymakers. I draw this card, I cripple you. So I think Leyline is fine. But I think like something like Dread of Night is too narrow, and you should be looking at things like Pyrokinesis or Blazing Volley that have an extremely powerful free or undercosted effect, so that you can deploy them and you get your X for 1. So I'd get rid of those Dread of Nights. I don't think Duretti's actually good enough. Like, I understand that it's a red-black Planeswalker and you're kind of limited in what you can play if you want a Planeswalker type effect. But, like, say you're playing against Miracles, is making a 1/1 creature token every turn good enough? If it has Defender? No. I guess not. I actually didn't even realize those tokens had Defender. So, I guess this is your artifact creature removal for matchups like D&T. Yeah, Marsh Casualties is another sort of card that I'm talking about. Like your Blazing Volleys, your Marsh Casualties. Like you want those cards to be really hard hitting. Hey Arkin, thank you very much for hosting. So for anyone just tuning in now, hello, my name's Phil Gallagher. I run a website called Thraben University that is specifically for Legacy D&T. And right now we're finishing up a donation deck list, and I'm sort of helping one of my viewers think through some of their sideboard choices. So this Duretti feels too slow to me. It seems very clunky. So I might consider like another one of the burn staples. If you want to just like get rid of like equipment and such, just something like Smash to Smithereens might be better. I'm also not 100% sure that this Destructive Revelry plan is worth the weakening of the mana for Stomping Ground. Because like as we saw a couple of times, like my one Stomping Ground got wastelanded, and then 3 cards in my deck became uncastable. Or if my opponent had played something like Back to Basics and I had already fetched my Stomping Grounds, it would become uncastable. So I don't know if you're just supposed to like ignore enchantments and just play a couple of smashes or something like that. But food for thought. And then these 4 cards all seem kind of medium. And one of the things I noticed about your sideboard is you basically can't deal with combo, right? So for your combo matchups, you only have 4 cards in your main deck that matter. You have 4 Thoughtseize. That's all. So I think you need some more heavy-hitting cards against combo. I think Eidolon of the Great Rebel is a very good choice on that front, and that's maybe a card that should be in the main deck anyway. So I think you need some number of anti-combo hate cards, probably 4, at least 4, because you have these 4 cards in the main deck that you can't do anything with against a lot of the combo decks, like, say, Ant, and these just need to go. These need to be able to come out, and if you're playing against, like, a non-graveyard hate combo deck like Show and Tell, you've just got basically stone cold nothing for them. So I would say rethink the sideboard entirely. I think the ley lines are good. I do think you need something like some card to punish the graveyard decks, and I think ley line's a good choice. So I might do something like 2 Smash to Smithereens, 2 to 3 very powerful sweeper effects. It depends on what you do with the mana, but consider things like Blazing Volley, Marsh Casualties, and Pyrokinesis. I say you want like 2 to 3 of those sorts of cards. I'd say you want 4 anti-combo cards. Eidolons, if they don't make it into the main deck, are probably your best option. And then beyond that, kind of see where the rest of the main deck shakes up and do some adjustments of the last 2 sideboard slots. Yeah, Arc and back Price of Progress was one of the things that we had talked about that would like probably be really good in the main deck, maybe even. Yeah, if Price of Progress doesn't make it into the main deck, then I really like 2 of those in the sideboard. Another thing that you could consider is just like some other card that would hate on a control deck like Miracles or Grixis Control. So a Sulfuric Vortex, for example, would be fine. Yeah, Price of Progress with Death Shadow does seem pretty sweet. So kind of like in conclusion, I think that this deck list isn't competitive as it currently stands. The idea is not entirely crazy of trying to like mix Burn and Death's Shadow, like to give yourself a lot of weird decision points. I think this sort of deck can be successful at the local level, but I can't really ever see it succeeding at like a GP level, and maybe not even an open level. It's a little hard to say. Like this version was so rough around the edges that I just kind of tripped over myself a lot, and I had a lot of games of non-magic, and I think some refinement would help that. Okay, Lord Darkview, Bitter Blossom is another wonderful idea. I really do like that. That would fall into the camp of cards that could be very good against a deck like Miracles or Grixis Control, while also contributing to this Death Shadow plan. All right. I don't really feel like I've streamed enough tonight yet. I wanna play a few games with D&T. So I'm gonna take a break for just a minute or two. I'm going to go ahead and use the bathroom, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch the deck list that I have up on stream here. So I will be right back. All right, folks, I'm back. Ooh, looks like we got a pretty big comment. I don't think I could conceivably get that kind of feedback from anyone else, and it's certainly not all feedback I could give myself and have it be taken seriously, mostly because I'm not a Legacy player and my team takes my input in regards to Legacy much less seriously than our actual Legacy player. So kind of one of my personal policies is that, like, anytime I'm going to play a deck, I'm gonna treat that deck seriously. I'm gonna do my research. I'm gonna give like the best opinions that I can about that deck and try to improve it, right? Like, I think it would be very easy to look at this deck list and go, like, this deck list sucks. This is absolutely unplayable, and not give it any more serious thought than that. But that's not really what I'm about, right? I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, so if I'm gonna play Magic, I'm gonna take that educational approach, and we're gonna see what we can learn from it. Now let's play some D&T. Everyone loves D&T. Actually, do we have anything else? I've kind of wanted to like mess around with red and see if that's actually good. I think it's garbage, but I don't want to take the time to like build that on stream. So let's just like run back what I ran at the GP. That deck list was hot. But sometime soon I'll mess around with some of the splash builds. People keep telling me that like the red splash is good, but I just don't buy it. And thank you for the donation. Like that donation helps me to keep doing what I love on stream. Like I love playing Magic. It's a great way to spend my nights. So now the Cardboard Live extension on screen should be updated. So for anyone not familiar with that, the little card face that's on the left-hand side of the screen, if you click that, you will see my D&T deck list here in all of its glory. This is the deck list that I did play at GP Richmond to a 59th place finish. And if you like this deck list, there is a little copy button sort of by the mana symbols that you can use to copy it to your clipboard. Oh, and Arkin, if you're still in chat, I see you've broken that trophy problem you were having. So for anyone not familiar with Arkin, Arkin streams a lot. I auto-host him sometimes. It's pretty good content, but Arkin had just like an absolutely terrible run at the beginning of this season where he was just like playing and could not get a 5-0 to save his life. So happy to see you up here. Well, I play 2 Caracas, and I never want to see both. It's gonna be that kind of night, is it? All right, what are my hits? So 23 lands remaining. 7 of those are colorless. So that's 16 hits or Ether Vial to make this hand acceptable. My opponent has already mulliganed. This is already sort of like a further mulligan, though, because of this Batter Skull. I probably just need to pitch this one. This is a great 5-card hand. That land can go to the bottom. Bet my opponent's just like Reanimator. Yes, Tyrant's Choice is the card. It's black and a colorless, and the 2 modes are Edict and your opponent loses 4 life. All right. Remember, chat, Mom can attack. And when you're pretty sure your opponent's colorless, you should attack with Mom if given the opportunity. So next turn my opponent could go 3, 4, 5, 6 mana, potentially 7 if they play a land, 8 if they play a soul land or a post. Caracas before the second plains in case one of my future draws is a land that matters more. I can still have the Caracas in play for the effect. So I probably just need to, like, blindly name a number with Sanctum Prelate. And I guess that number's 7 for All Is Dust. We might just still lose to an Ugin, or we might just lose to a big stupid Eldrazi or something like that, but I need to put something into play here. Alright, so my opponent gets plains. Unfortunately, most of my equipment aren't, like, super good here. Am I willing to just suicide these creatures in? I don't think so. If I draw Swords to Plowshares, it's still pretty good. I'm going to get Jitte under the assumption that over the course of, like, 2 turns, I could, like, suicide into my opponent's creatures and do something meaningful. But if my opponent just has another, like, big stupid idiot, I'm in all sorts of trouble. Ugh. Oh great, a Rishadenport. That's terrifying. That's actually, like, really good. Gives my opponent, like, something to do. I'm going to take this hit. I think. Because if I draw a land... If I draw a land, I can go... Oh, the port messes with that too. I'm going to take this hit. Rather than go Thalia bounce. Because, like, there's this world where I want to have the Thalia in play to go, like, first strike, get Jitte counters, and try to wiggle through in that way. Alright, opponent does not know how Rishadenport works. I'm fine with that. Either that or they've thought ahead and they know they want to tap down my Caracas because I was going to have Jitte. In which case, well done, opponent. Nope, they don't know how to use Caracas. Now my opponent's just gonna like Ayavugan up something terrible or cast something terrible, and I'll just die. Walking Ballista is a very good card. Alright, so we're playing against Big Eldrazi, loss. Game 1, loss to Walking Ballista. Alright, so probably want Relic Order, probably want Paths, my own Ballista is acceptable, my own Gideon's acceptable, my own Recruiter is pretty good. These are probably the cards that are coming in, these are cards that I'd consider. So Mother of Runes is unplayable. This isn't really the best like spot for Mirroring Crusader. A lot of medium cards. So if I assume that those don't end up coming in because I just try to like close the game before my opponent goes bigger than me, then I'd probably trim 2 of the Swords to Plowshares because my opponent doesn't necessarily have that many huge creatures. I want to have access to some of them, but I don't want to swords all the time and just give them that life back. And, oh, that would actually put me right at 60. I could consider Ballista, but my Ballista is going to be smallish. And I can consider Gideon just as, like, a threat that I could put down and, like, provide a lot of pressure with. But it's just another card that'll eat it to an all is dust if that resolves. Sanctum Prelate's also medium. I could consider boarding that out. So my hand's pretty great, but I'll fold to a Sorceress Spyglass from my opponent. Best draws off the top would be Rishadenport, followed by Wasteland. But honestly, any land's a pretty solid draw. Alright, well, the good news is that I've got a couple of Phyrexian Revokers. Oh man, the better news is that I have a port. So now I get to put this Thalia in and port my opponent off of their Ancient Tomb. Alright. So I get to shut off Walking Ballista with this one. I've sort of invalidated Jete with my first striker currently, although it is a problem a little bit further down the line. Do I just want to revoke Jete now? If I don't, my opponent can just equip this and then just, like, hang out with it, which doesn't favor me. I should just revoke it now. Please don't Oblivion Sower me here. Technically got what I wanted. Okay, this game now falls apart. My opponent gets to Endbringer this one on Walking Ballista, kill this one. Equip Jete, swing. Yeah, I have lost this game now. It's going to take a turn or two to play out, but we're dead. Sort of my hope is that my opponent does not have another land. To sort of have any hope, I'm going to have to, I guess, like, peel Flicker Wisp off the top, Flicker Chalice, Swords Endbringer. Okay. Yep. Ugh, that's frustrating. That's so frustrating. Alright, so what's the world where I get back in this now? I get to put in a Batter Skull. Alright, so I just have to pass here, I think. This forces my opponent into pinging with Thalia if he wants to go Jete equip and get Jete counters. All right, my opponent has all the things over there. I'm not entirely convinced that this is better than getting Jitte counters, but I understand the diversification. All right, current plan is to put my own Jitte on Batterskull or my own... Jeez. Since my opponent's just probably going to Karn minus again and create a giant artifact army, I probably just need the size of this sword more so than anything else. My opponent missed a free attack with Walking Ballista. That card's not blocking. Well, I guess my opponent could, like, block to stop me from, like, life-linking with the Germ and then ping something, but that throws away, like, the Walking Ballista, which is an insane card otherwise. Alright, so game 2, loss to Ballista and Jitte. With guest appearances by Endbringer and other terrible things. Alright, let's do one more. That was both quick and terrible. I don't want to end on that. Alright, my hand is pretty great in the dark. I'll be keeping. Sweet, my opponent did not end of turn Entomb. That's great. So I guess it's Storm? Please just imprint a blue thing and cantrip. I don't think that's happening. Feels like I'm dead. I can beat a small amount of goblins, though. Main deck Xantid Swarm, wow. Cruel bargain. Hello. So I guess this is actually the Spanish Inquisition. So my opponent can go black, 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 cruel bargain. Otherwise, they go right, right, past in flames. Okay, yeah. So they go right, right. Past in flames, crack LED. Cast the rituals again. Infernal Tutor, go. So I expect this is just like another ritual here. Unless they just want to like kill me now and not crank up the storm count. But that is not what they want. Alright, so now it's flashback, past in flames, cast a whole bunch of rituals, and go. I don't... Okay, there's the tendrils, I see. Okay. Alright, so D&T versus Spanish Inquisition. Loss. Game 1, get turn 2. So surgical, chalice, fairy's kind of medium, but I'll probably play it. Recruiter, rip relic order. Swords of Plowshares is unplayable. Palace Jailer is unplayable. I want to trim some amount of the equipment, so I'll probably get rid of the Jitte. And then I need to trim some of this top end just because like I'm not going to get to them and they're not going to matter most of the time. So hedging. Now the Plugros are fine because of the Chrome Moxen, so I guess I'll get rid of a couple of Mirror Crusaders. And we'll call that good. Mom's also probably pretty bad, but I don't know exactly what their like sideboard suite looks like. So I'll keep her. I can't actually deploy a turn 2 hate card here, which matters a ton, so I'm going to mulligan this one. This is great. I'll send that to the bottom. So I'll go Plains, and then to decrease the chances that I actually get turn 1, I'll cast a Chalice on 0. And then I'll get to Thalia on turn 2 if I don't get Thoughtseized. If I do get Thoughtseized, like, whatever, I will Wasteland them or Port them and just hope to draw into something that matters. I'm just going to Wasteland. Rashadan Port probably has the same effect this turn and could allow me to cast a Flicker Wisp on the following turn, but I don't even know if I would cast the Flicker Wisp rather than just, like, Port if my opponent has another land, so I think I like this better. And for anyone curious why I tried out Chalice of the Void going into the GP, it's for the Storm matchup and, like, all of the sort of, like, small offshoots. The ability to, like, just play a hate card on turn 1 before, like, your opponent is expecting a hate card to come down is actually very powerful. And Chalice was also testing very well versus Miracles. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Duress. Deal. So I want to pressure my opponent's life total as aggressively as I can because, like, Ad Nauseam is a card that matters a lot. And I'm fine with playing out more creatures. Like, one of the most dangerous things my opponent could do is massacre me. And if they massacre me, I still have a Batterskull in play. So that's awesome. So that Chalice of the Void most certainly won me that game. I don't know that many other cards would have. I imagine my opponent's hand could have gone off if not for the Chalice. This hand's very medium. If I get thought seized, I can't really do much with this hand. I might try to mulligan to a 6-card hand that has 2 different 2-drops. Like a hand that has something like Thalia and Revoker or Thalia and Chalice is going to be so much more threatening than this hand. And even a hand with like Stoneforge Mystic also just hedges against the goblins. And I'll fold to the goblins with this hand. I wouldn't fault someone for keeping this, but I'm going to try to mulligan. I don't think this hand wins. This hand has a shot. Mom can go to the bottom. Alright, seems like my opponent's going. If they go for some sort of Past in Flames kill, I might be able to get them. Ah, just have the Adnaz. Alright. Alright, LED's terrifying. There's an initial mana source. I should be getting to the territory where I'm just dead. My opponent needs to be able to make 1 more mana, I believe. Ooh, I might be able to get my opponent. Alright. So, LED. Lotus Petal. Chrome Mox. Imprint. Infernal Contract. Yeah, so if I remove the Rite of Flame that's in the graveyard right now, this produces 2 mana. This is the 3rd mana. My opponent can't actually empty the Warrens this turn. Or actually, that's not true, right? They make 2 mana, 3 mana, Burning Wish down to 1 mana, crack LED empty, assuming there's another empty in there, which there should be. But I think my best chance of winning involves tagging this right now. And hoping my opponent doesn't have an empty in the board. Oh, I guess just Tendrils in the board also kills me. More cleanly at that. Alright, so game 3, lost turn 1 to Adnos. Alright, well that's disappointing. Alright, chat, I'm going to go ahead and call it there. You got a few bonus D&T rounds at the end, although it was kind of rough, got some unfortunate pairings. Alright, my name is Phil Gallagher, I run Thraben University, and if you enjoyed this content, please consider following my channel, and if you really enjoyed it, consider doing a donation deck list or subscribing to my channel to support what I do. I got 59th at GP Richmond this weekend. There is a tournament report up on my website, Thraben University. It's linked below the stream. And I want to take this opportunity to thank my sponsors, Cardboard Live and Card Hoarder. Card Hoarder let me borrow all of my sweet decks today that let me stream, and Cardboard Live is that sweet extension that you see on the screen. I will see you all on Saturday morning. I'll probably be playing D&T then. Cheers.